Hey my friends, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to my art studio. So I am kicking off my version of Vlogmas today. I think this is my third year of trying to participate in the YouTube tradition of Vlogmas. It's actually a really fun challenge for me because it really inspires and motivates me to create more videos in a shorter, condensed amount of time. I love creating videos, and so I've got some fun stuff planned leading up to Christmas. We will see how much I can do and how far I get. I've actually made it quite far in the last couple of years, and for sure I've got 12 videos planned for you all, but there might be a little bit more if I can fit it into my schedule. So I thought it'd be fun today to kick things off, sharing with you all one of my favorite ways to create a really fast, simple art journal with just a handful of spreads and pages that you can work through, just using one piece of paper and 2 pieces of recycled cardboard. I am big on art journaling. I have tons of art journals. There's a whole shelf behind me with all my different art journals that at any given moment I am working through. But I like having smaller surfaces as well as journals that don't have a lot of pages. Oftentimes I feel a lot of pressure when it comes to creating any kind of art, and sometimes my bigger art journals, I just feel tons of pressure to fill stuff up. I like a smaller version of an art journal because I can quickly fill up those spreads, often practice and experiment with my ideas. So I actually made myself a little journal for a virtual retreat that I'm going to be offering December 21st. I'm going to be teaching acrylic painting on different surfaces revolving around the holiday theme. But when I teach, and I spend a lot of time teaching art, I always spend a lot of time practicing, figuring out how and what I will teach, and just working through my ideas. And little tiny journals like this, ones that have a smaller page count, are what I actually really like because I can work through my practice, my experiments, my ideas, and my class sample. So I'm going to take you along the process of me creating this little art journal that I made out of 1 piece of paper and 2 pieces of recycled cardboard. And I'll let you watch me practice and work through my ideas for my future class. I'm hoping this inspires you all, those of you who are art journalers or wanting to get into art journaling, see that you really don't need a lot of money, you don't need a lot of tools and materials to make something or get creative with what you might already have on hand. So we're going to get started. We're going to jump into all that creativity.
All right, so for this process, I'm going to be using watercolor paper. This is 140-pound Canson cold press watercolor paper in the size 9 by 12 sheets, and I'm just going to actually cut it in half. So I have 2 strips. You can see what it looks like before I cut it in half, and then I cut it directly in half to have these 2 long strips that I can then attach together. And for the art journals that I like to create with that folded sheet of paper, I actually like them to be quite long so I can fold them into different panels. And I'm going to use a little bit of Elmer's glue and then reinforce where I attach those sheets with a little bit of good old-fashioned masking tape. Now you could use your favorite adhesive, you could stitch them together. I'm just pretty simple and basic over here, and I like to just do it a pretty simple way with what I have on hand. And because this journal is going to be made for me and my acrylic painting process, I'm not too picky about how I attach things and where those seams will be. Again, I like to use supplies that I have on hand, so you could take this concept and tweak it, change it to apply to the way that you work, what types of materials you're going to be using. But this is going to get covered with a lot of acrylic paint, so I'm not too picky about even using that masking tape. And as you watch me work later on in this video, you will see that you can't even tell where that masking tape and where that seam is where I've attached my 2 pieces. And since these types of art journals are really for me to experiment and practice in, it's easier for me to let go of any perfection that goes along creating and putting a journal like this together. Now, once you've got everything attached, if you want to go as long as I am with those strips, you can then fold it up to size. So I like creating more rectangular panels, but you could really get creative with where you put your folds. And everything that you fold up is going to be a spread or a panel that you can work on. I like for my panels to feel and look equal, so I do my best to fold them up, but I'm not a perfectionist over here, so oftentimes it can be a little bit wonky. Again, because I create these just for myself, I don't get too concerned with those details. And if I need to trim things down just to get it a little bit smaller to get things to fit, I will do that. You know, if you have really large sheets of paper, if you've got large, big sheets of watercolor paper, Mixed media paper, those are going to work too, where you don't have to attach those strips together. But for the most part, you can attach things, make them as long as you want, so you have as many panels to work on moving forward. And at this stage, I actually like to start adding paint to both sides of that paper. So before I add a cover and a back cover to things, I'll pull out my acrylic paint and just literally go messy and expressive on that surface. Those of you who know the way that I work, I really enjoy starting on something that has color, especially if I'm working with acrylic paint. So most of my art journals get nice layers of color so I can flip through those pages and have color already on that page. I really don't like a white page to start with when I'm painting, so I take time to just play with color, get super expressive on that surface. And you can see I'm picking a little bit of different colors for each of those panels, but letting things be very messy, very expressive. The fun thing about working on something like watercolor paper is it's quite thick, so it takes that acrylic paint really well. And the more layers of acrylic paint you add, the thicker things are going to be, and the more stability you will have moving forward. So I'm going to paint both the front and the back. We're going to let this dry and then add a front and back cover. The great thing about all those layers is, again, you have that stability. It really thickens up that surface. And once it's dry, you have all of these different colors, expressive colors throughout, so you can have a great space to start painting over the top of. Now, I have grabbed 2 pieces of recycled cardboard, just pulled from some boxes from the mail, and I have cut them to size so I can put one on the front and the back. And I'm just going to be using Elmer's glue, which was the closest adhesive that I had on hand here at my studio table, but you could use a variety of different adhesives depending on what you prefer. And I've also got 2 little pieces of ribbon that I'm going to tuck inside so that I have a place to kind of tie off and create a little bit of a closure for that journal. I really love incorporating ribbon and thread and fibers into my art journaling process. And because I tend to spend a lot of time opening and closing things, I love adding something that I can use as a closure that I can tie off. This is a great way to put to use maybe recycled items, cutaways of things, or collecting scraps of ribbon and ties during the holiday season. I am notorious for the person that saves wrapping paper and ribbon, and I use it all year long in my art journaling process. It's perfect to add these simple little ties to this kind of a journal. An accordion journal or fold up journal is fun because it kind of makes things look a little bit more special. And I just tuck it in between that cover and my paper so that once it dries, it's secured and I can use it to tie off my journal as I begin to work throughout that surface. And I do the same thing to the back of that journal. So I've got a nice stable front and back that can be another surface that I can work within or over the top of. I love decorating the fronts and backs of my journals. Those are often the places that I have the most fun because it kind of sets the tone for everything that's going to go inside. And again, as I mentioned in my introduction, I am working on this journal specifically as a place to practice for a virtual retreat that is centered around holiday painting. And so I knew I wanted holiday colors, and I know that that cover as well as everything inside was going to be holiday themed because this is really about my practice. And so I know that I can really have fun with both the front and back as extra surfaces to work on. And you can see as I've got things finished up, I've got this nice stable journal. I've got that tie off. And now I can start playing around with painting over the front and back cover and playing on the inside. This is such a fun, basic way to create a really fast art journal where you don't have tons of pages to work through, but you've got enough to get creative and play around with concepts, practice, and new ideas. I also love a journal like this, an accordion style fold up journal, because you can display them standing up. You can really play around with how you use them, store them, display them, and they actually make really great gifts as well because you have a limited amount of pages and spreads on the inside. So I'm going to let y'all watch me just play in this journal. This is really me practicing my painting techniques and ideas that I will eventually be teaching later on in December. I'm hoping that this inspires you to maybe grab some extra supplies you might have around your studio or creative space and create your own little art journals to play in. It's a great way to put to use scrap papers, things you might already have on hand, or even recycle, upcycle things that might otherwise get thrown out.